afternoon, coolest coast. It is time for Coffee on the Coast. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Prigge. Welcoming back to the show, Tim Gadzinski of Manitowoc Public Library and Dr. Kaonou Hang-Vue. Hi, you guys.
Hello.
Hi.
So nice to see you.
Great to be here.
And I just want to wish everyone a happy May, which is also Asian Pacific Islander Celebration Month, right?
That's right.
Okay, awesome. So, Kaonou, you're here because you and the library are planning a special event. I'm just going to put this placard up so everyone can see the details right away. It is a Hmong Cultural Symposium, an exploration of Hmong-American identity. This is happening Thursday, May 30th at 5 p.m. at the Manitowoc Public Library. What is this symposium?
So in the past, we have always wanted to introduce the Hmong culture, Hmong history, the beautiful Hmong fashion to the community, and we have. And this year, we decided that we were going to go into a kind of a different part of Hmong history. And so this year, we decided we're going to talk about our journey as refugees of war from Laos to Thailand to the United States.
Okay, right. So I think what's important to know when you say that is that this wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to grab my passport and go on this fun trip, right? This is a serious journey. Many of these stories that are going to be shared, people were fleeing for their lives, right? This is like post-war persecution and traveling often on foot through jungles across the Mekong River, making their way to the refugee camps and then finally to America, which also a great big kind of scary unknown, I imagine. Who are we going to be talking to?
So on May 30th, we have three panelists, Tu Long Ying, Mai Kao Tao, and Sia Feng. They're all from the local community, and they're going to share their story. Because just like you said, Tina, this is not where you pack your suitcase, get your passport and get on the plane and go somewhere. We're talking about taking your family and whatever you can carry and literally walking through the jungles, crossing the Mekong River. And, you have to know that sometimes family members didn't make it. Families were torn apart. Parents didn't know if their kids were alive or not, if they had made it or not. Once you got to the refugee camps, you didn't know where you were going to be going. Sometimes a family ended up in France. Other family members ended up in the United States. Others ended up in Australia. And so even though you knew you were going to be going somewhere, you still didn't know where you were going to be going. If you were going to be with your family, moms and dads were separated, kids are separated, grandparents are separated. There were a lot of difficult decisions that had to be made, like, are you going to be able to make it? Should you stay? Should you not go? Those kind of questions.
Right. Wow. And then, coming to America, such a different culture than where they were coming from. I imagine too, I don't just imagine, but I read this book and it was talking about the struggle with having to understand the new culture and having to kind of part with other cultural customs, things that weren't the same, or like the fear of, when a child is born, and then, when somebody dies, having to like go back to the area that they were born. How do you do that when you've traveled halfway across the world, right? Like so much goes into this. I think these stories are going to be really impactful and really important to be passed down.
That's right. It's to imagine coming into a new place where you've never seen snow, and all of a sudden now there's snow. You come to a place where you speak one language and everybody else speaks a different language, and they don't understand you. And it's up to you to learn the new language, new customs, the new culture.
Wow. Tim, why do you think that this is important for the library to be hosting? And I'm so thankful that you are, by the way.
Well, and thank you for having me here. I'm trying to sit as still as possible. And I'm essentially considering myself eye candy for Kaonou to talk, because she's so much more important. Why is it important? Because it is so desperately important to celebrate the diversity within your community. And all too often things get glossed over, and people, well, for one, I personally remember when refugees started showing up, and I was at St. Boniface. I had younger people that were my age in school with me, and it was sort of like, where did they come from? What's going on? And unfortunately, at that time, people weren't very talkative about it, and I guess, it's different. Like I had been talking to Canoe earlier about her uncle Paul. When you're younger, when you're a child, it's kind of an adventure. You don't even understand the gravity of it the way adults do. But I think it's so important. We have such a great Hmong population in our town that it needs to be celebrated, and people need to be aware of the cultural diversity and the stories, and um, as Canoe put it, the American dream that comes from it. It is not your cookie cutter American dream story. It is sweeping and terrifying, and the way Canoe has talked about it in the past. It has every element from the human spectrum condensed into one journey that you can imagine. It truly is epic, and in the truest sense of the word. And I cannot wait to hear the stories that people will be telling. Um, True stories are the best stories. I mean, fictional stories are fun, but true stories that really impact you while you're listening to them, that's the best. And that's, I there are a bunch of exhibitions going on at the library. So when um, we started talking about having the Hmong Symposium, it was like, we can't do anything as expansive and long term that we've been able to. But I was of the mindset, I'm like, Lord, it's just not going to do nothing. I mean, that wouldn't sit well with me at all, because year after year, Canoe has put together some just incredible things at the library, and to just let it drop, I wasn't going to have any of that. So I approached Canoe, and fortunately, she came up with, well, not fortunately. I mean, I knew something incredible was going to happen, but I'm
Yeah.
just glad that I didn't say, nah, we're doing enough. You can never do enough.
You can never do enough. And what a great opportunity to better understand our neighbors,
Yeah.
by hearing these stories. And Kanu, I just want to say too, we are so fortunate, and the Hmong community is so fortunate that you are such an advocate for documenting and sharing and educating. And I just want to put this up really quick to let people know again what we're talking about. It's a Hmong Cultural Symposium. This is an exploration of Hmong American identity. It's happening Thursday, May 30th at 5 p.m. In addition to some of these incredible moving stories that we're going to hear, you also have some other things planned, some cultural entertainments, some foods. Can you tell us about that?
That's right. So, a night that's going to be filled with, a lot of emotions, but we're always going to bring in Hmong fashion, Hmong culture. So you're going to hear traditional Hmong chanting, some Hmong songs, traditional Hmong dancing, our Hmong version of line dancing. And if you've been dancing, you do with us. And then the Manitowoc Fire and Grill and the Ann Asian Market, they both donated treats for that night as well. So if you want to come taste some Hmong treats, you are more than welcome to join us.
Nice. And you mentioned Hmong fashion. I noticed that you're wearing something quite beautiful. Can you tell us and show us what you're wearing?
That's right. So this is a Hmong inspired jacket. They are very, very popular. And you can see on my sleeves and on the labels, there's Hmong design. This is called batik. And this is a Hmong printing, I guess you could call it, on clothes. And so I'm just wearing this to show some Hmong pride.
Nice. What are some other things that in the Hmong community are being done to keep the culture alive and vibrant?
I feel like the older generation, like my generation and older, it is very important for us to keep our culture alive because our kids have been immersed in the American culture. They really are Hmong American now. Sometimes I still consider myself Hmong, but my kids really, really are Hmong American now. And we do have a lot of enrichment programs during the summer. The bigger cities will have language immersion, culture immersion, dance programs, things like that. There are classes where they're teaching the younger generation how to play the qing, the Hmong musical instrument. So there are classes. You just have to look for them, and they are generally in the bigger cities.
Right. Okay. What else should people know about the Hmong Symposium? I do want to say it is happening live at the library and it will not be live streamed. So to learn from this symposium, please attend in person.
So I
It's just
think
so much hard to have fantastic treats online. I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again. You can't eat over the internet. But it's so much more impactful to see it and experience it in person. That's one of the reasons I never even considered doing it as a hybrid. It's one thing when you're getting a lecture about a geopolitical topic where you can enjoy it in room, which is a different experience, but you can also enjoy it and get the information at home in your pajamas eating some mac and cheese, but this is the kind of thing that you need to experience in person, in the flesh. So
I'd shared with Tim earlier that I was actually able to tell my story at the library. I think it was last year. And so I was in front of a crowd of 20 people. I'd practiced my story. I had it down straight. I was, all ready to go. And when I was telling my story perfectly, it was fine. But in front of these 20 people telling my story, I actually broke down and cried. And, some of the people in the audience cried with me. They gave me Kleenex. They told me, it's okay. And so, in order to experience the full experience, I really do think you need to be there. You need to experience and see, hear, feel, everybody's unique story that they're going to be sharing with us.
Yeah. Yeah. I once upon a time had a conversation with a Hmong gentleman, and he was telling me about his journey and how difficult it was. And when it was time to come to America, it was also confusing because he said it was like this iron eagle. They couldn't quite grasp how he was getting from where he was in Thailand to how he was getting to America, and all he could think was that it was this iron eagle, right? So much to understand, so much to unpack and appreciate about the journeys.
That's right. You have to imagine that, Hmong people are poor farmers. So imagine telling, a poor farmer, you're going to get on this plane and it's going to take you so far away from your home. It's going to take you to America. It's going to take you across the ocean. And how can you even imagine what an airplane is when it's not, in your vocabulary?
Right. Right, right. Do many of the Hmong families that are here today still have relatives back in Laos, or are there so many generations here that there's not so much of a tie?
There are waves of Hmong people that came over. And fortunately, my family was one of the first waves. So we came in 1978. But there are people that have come in waves later. And so I'm sure there's always still family over there. There are people who chose not to come because I think just being in a refugee camp and kind of knowing where you are may actually be safer than not knowing where you're going to be going to. And so there are some people who chose to stay behind.
Interesting. Have you ever traveled back?
I've traveled to Asia a couple of times, but I have actually not been back to Laos or Thailand. It is one of the places that I still want to go back to. My parents have gone back a couple of times, and I would love to. I just haven't had the opportunity to yet.
Do you know if some of the presenters who are going to be sharing their stories have made the reverse journey?
I believe a couple of them have. Yes. Yep. So they can share, that part of their story as well.
Yeah. How interesting. I try to put myself in that mindset, and I'm not sure if I would be brave enough, considering the hardship and the trauma of taking the journey in the first place, to do the reverse journey. So that's
You
impressive.
know, us sitting here now, we can look back at history and say, well, that was obviously the best choice. But you have to remember that these people left their country. They literally had nothing. Some of their family members may not be with them, and they're in a refugee camp. And at that time, you don't know what is best. Do you get on this, big airplane and it's going to take you somewhere and you're going to be safe and hopefully you can find the rest of your family members? Or is it better to stay where you are, look for your family members and, just kind of sit quiet and stay there? We can look back and say, obviously it was best for us to get on that plane and come to the United States and find our American dream. But in that moment, you don't know that that was the best choice.
Right. Wow. Do you know, this many years on, have families that were separated, do you know if they've been able to reconnect?
So some have, and then there are family members who've just been separated, even husbands and wives who've just been separated, who have not been able to find each other, and they just had to remarry and get on with their lives. Obviously, this is, 40 some years ago. We don't have cell phones. It's not like I can go on the radio and say, hey, I'm looking for so and so. They didn't have that technology. So if you're separated and that's it, that's it. Yeah.
Another reason why, what's happening? I feel like I hear construction noises. So, just taking into consideration all of that and really appreciating where we are today and not having to go through that, right?
That's right.
So the language, your parents migrated over. Did you learn how to speak Hmong?
So when I was a child, my parents were taking English adult classes. They were learning skills, trades, going to school. And so my maternal grandmother actually raised me, and she only spoke Hmong. And so at home, I would speak Hmong. And then during, like daycare, Head Start, school, I would speak English. And so when you're at school, you have to put kind of like your English hat on. And then when you come home, you have to put your Hmong hat on. And so even as a young child in elementary school, sometimes you would have to be the interpreter for your parents. And, you'd have to kind of be like the little adult, even though you were just a child.
And then it must have fallen to you as well to kind of introduce your family to some of the, outside customs, things that are going on, things like that. Do you
Yep.
remember, is there anything that you introduced your family to that was like a shock or a surprise?
I think that there were so many things that are different between our cultures that eventually you just got used to the fact that everything is just different. And so you just kind of got used to it, and it really didn't shock you anymore.
Interesting. I think I
Yeah.
read a post yesterday from the public schools that Manitowoc has maybe like the third largest Hmong population in Wisconsin. Do you know if that, am I,
That probably sounds about right because I'm thinking like maybe Milwaukee and Appleton or Green Bay might have the biggest, Hmong population and, students, but Manitowoc is right up there. It is. And it's because of the jobs that Manitowoc has and the low living costs. And so there are a lot of Hmong people in Manitowoc. And, once a family comes here, we like to be with our families. And so if, a couple of families come here and they like this place and they've found nice jobs and homes, they're going to be like, hey, we are here. We like it here. Why don't you guys move here too?
yeah, all the more reason to hear these stories and understand what's happening in our community. What else should people know, Kaonou, about the symposium that you have planned?
I think what's really special about this night is that you may not hear these stories ever again. It's not like we go out and tell people our stories on the streets. And so it's very important that people do hear our stories. They find out who we are, where we come from, why we're here, why we call Manitowoc our home. So I think it's the individual stories that are the most special tonight, or on May 30th, that we're going to be sharing with everybody.
Yeah, awesome. So the Hmong Cultural Symposium, an exploration of Hmong-American identity, Thursday, May 30th, 5 p.m. in the Bolkansky Room at the Manitowoc Public Library. Tim, anything else you want viewers to know?
Just that they should be there on May 30th, because, as I said earlier, stories like this are so impactful, and there's universal elements to everything that you wouldn't expect when you hear someone telling their stories. And it brings a community together, and it makes you appreciate the connection points and the diversity at exactly the same time. Plus, there are treats. Plus, there's incredible, cultural things to experience as well. And it's a great way to learn about your community, the diversity within your community that you may just take for granted or aren't even aware of. And that's why a program like this is so important.
Yeah.
And thank you for letting me talk. And I believe that it's a reward for sitting here quietly.
Well, I really appreciate both of you coming to share the news about this event. Kaonou, I really appreciate you for putting events like this together and keeping the knowledge going, sharing the culture, just keeping it alive, keeping the community vibrant. I really appreciate both of you.
You're welcome. And Tina, if you pull up the flyer again, I just want to mention, so that black and white picture is actually a personal photo. So in that picture, it's my mom is in there, my grandmother's in there, my uncles are in there, some of my aunts are in there. And so that picture is not just, a stock photo off of, Amazon or something. It's actually my personal family's history. And I chose that photo because I thought it was really important, and it really fit in well with the stories that we're going to be telling that night.
Wow. Oh, I'm really glad you pointed that out. That's incredible. Are you in this photo?
So I am not in this photo yet. I am not even, on this earth or anything like that yet.
And so is that a house that they're standing in front of?
Yep. So those are probably, like the simple structures that they would call houses. And this is what everybody probably wore on an everyday basis. And normally when you guys see us, we're all decked out in our Hmong outfits, but that's probably what you would wear, to, like a Hmong New Year or something like that. But what you see in that picture is probably what everybody wore on a daily basis.
To just do the daily work.
Yep. Farming, chores, things like that.
So do you have a special outfit that you're planning for the symposium?
Well, I have so many. I could just, pull any of them, any outfit out of my closet. I've got so many, both for me, my daughter, my son, my husband.
Are you going to dress Tim that night?
Tim, do you want to get dressed?
No. I mean, I will wear clothing, but I don't want to detract. I will just be there to help things run smoothly.
Kaonou, if there are viewers that are planning to attend and if they have Hmong clothing, can they wear it that night?
Yes, please. Please wear your Hmong outfits if you do. If you're Hmong and you do want to wear your outfit, wear your outfit. If you're not Hmong and you've got, like a cute little jacket or, like a purse that's, Asian inspired or Hmong inspired, and you want to wear it or bring it, go ahead.
Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you to my guests today, Tim Gadzinski of Manitowoc Public Library and Dr. Kaonou Hang-Vue. We were talking about the Hmong Cultural Symposium happening Thursday, May 30th, 5 p.m. at the Manitowoc Public Library. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host, Tina Prigge. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Tina.